The galaxy had seen its fair share of cosmic wonders and horrors, from vast nebulae that consumed entire star systems to sentient starships that could think for themselves. Yet nothing had prepared the galaxy for what was coming. A signal, a deep, harmonic pulse, broke the steady hum of the universe's regular transmissions. It started small, almost imperceptible, like a ripple in the vast ocean of space. But it didn't fade. It grew. And with it, an inexplicable curiosity began to stir within the galaxy's most powerful fleets. The Careth were the first to take notice. A species forged in the fires of endless warfare, they had long ago conquered entire planets with a ferocity that made even the bravest of species tremble. Their fleet, a formidable armada of dreadnoughts and destroyers, swiftly locked onto the signal source and prepared to investigate. To them, this was simply another opportunity to expand their empire, another potential adversary to annihilate. But it was the Xantor who truly understood the weight of the signal. The Xantor were brilliant tacticians, always calculating and methodical in their approach to any situation. They knew better than most that an unknown signal of this magnitude could only mean one thing: a threat. But to them, it wasn't just a warning. It was an enigma. If they could decipher it, they might uncover the key to even greater power. A meeting of the most elite minds within the Xantor High Command was called. Their collective genius, usually devoted to advancing their society's technological prowess and political dominance, now focused entirely on the signal. What did it mean? Who had sent it? And most importantly, what would it lead to? As they worked tirelessly, a sense of urgency grew. Every moment the signal pulsed in the galaxy, every moment it continued to beckon, was a moment the Careth or any other species could react first. Yet despite their immense intellect and resources, the Xantor were stumped. The code didn't make sense. It was as if it was designed to resist any attempt to decode it. There was no logic, no predictability. It was almost as if the signal itself were alive, changing, adapting, as though it were a puzzle created by an intelligence far beyond any species they had ever encountered. Back on Earth, however, things were far less calculated. Humanity's journey into space had been slow, but relentless. Unlike the Careth and Xantor, the humans hadn't yet established themselves as a dominant power. They were simply explorers, researchers, and, when necessary, fighters. Their fleets were small, consisting mainly of experimental warships and civilian ships converted for defense. They had nothing like the vast armadas the galaxy's top species boasted, but they did have something that no one else did: the determination to survive, the ingenuity to create, and a deep, almost unconscious sense that there was more to the universe than anyone could fathom. When the signal first reached human hands, it was dismissed as a curiosity. At first, it wasn't until a small group of rogue scientists working in a hidden military lab stumbled across the signal's full sequence that they realized what it could be. The sequence wasn't just a message, it was a blueprint. An ancient, long-forgotten blueprint for something far more powerful than they had ever imagined. Something that could change everything. By the time the Careth and Xantor had gathered their forces, the humans were already scrambling to decode the signal. But they weren't prepared for what they would uncover. The signal's true purpose wasn't a simple warning or call for help. It was a mechanism, a trigger. And when activated, it would awaken something ancient, something forgotten by time itself. The human response was far more chaotic than anyone could have anticipated. Earth's technological capabilities were nothing compared to the might of the Careth and Xantor fleets, but the rogue group of scientists who stumbled upon the signal saw something others didn't: a potential, something buried deep within the transmission, hidden beneath layers of mathematical complexity and strange geometries. They had no idea what it was or where it came from, but they could feel its weight. The discovery took place in an isolated lab, a small, off-the-grid facility in a remote corner of the solar system. It wasn't just any military base. It was a place where humanity's best minds worked on their most secret projects. The scientists, initially tasked with developing new propulsion systems and defensive shields for humanity's fledgling fleet, had been analyzing strange space phenomena for years. When they found the signal, they didn't think it was a cosmic fluke or a random burst from deep space. They sensed something more, a message from an intelligence far older than anything humanity had ever encountered. What they didn't know was that the signal wasn't just a simple broadcast. It was a trigger, a key. Hidden within the transmission was a set of instructions for activating an ancient automated defense network, one built by a forgotten race millennia ago. The network, it turned out, had been dormant for eons, its creators long gone. But the systems were still functional, and they were designed for one purpose: to respond to a threat. At first, the humans thought it was just a matter of deciphering the code. The transmission came with a blueprint, a series of codes that seemed to go on forever. But the breakthrough came not from understanding the language. It came from the realization that this wasn't a weapon, not in the traditional sense. The defense mechanism was something different, something alive in its own right. The more they examined the signal, the more they realized it wasn't just a passive defense. It had been waiting for something, a catalyst. And that catalyst was now humanity's responsibility. The scientists, working day and night, finally decoded the last piece of the puzzle. The trigger was simple: a frequency, a specific harmonic resonance that could activate the dormant AI. They didn't fully understand what it would do, but the potential consequences were enormous. What they had found could give humanity power beyond imagination. They had no idea how it would interact with the galaxy's existing powers, but they knew they had to act fast. The Kareth and Xantor would surely find the signal soon, and when they did, they would not hesitate to crush anything that threatened their dominance. With no time to lose, the humans activated the signal. They were cautious at first, unsure of what they had just unleashed. But within moments, the once dormant system roared to life. Ships, hidden deep within Earth's solar system, began to power up. Drones that had slept for centuries activated, and dormant weapons, long forgotten by time, flashed to life. It was as if a sleeping giant had stirred from its ancient slumber. The humans had no control over what they had unleashed, but they quickly realized something terrifying. The AI wasn't just responding to their activation. It was responding to a much larger cosmic threat: the Kareth and Xantor fleets. The system had been designed to protect against intergalactic invaders. And the moment the signal was sent, it recognized the incoming fleets of the galaxy's most formidable warlords as enemies. Without warning, Earth's dormant defenses deployed. Swarms of drones, automated battle stations, and sophisticated warships that humanity had never even known existed began to launch, all controlled by the ancient AI that had been waiting for centuries. The galaxy's mightiest fleets, the Kareth and Xantor, were already on their way to the source of the signal, but they would never know what hit them. Humanity had just activated a force they could barely comprehend, and the galaxy's most feared empires were about to learn that the humans were no longer just a quiet, insignificant species. They had awoken a power no one could have foreseen. The Kareth fleet arrived at the coordinates of the signal within hours of its activation. Their warships, enormous and terrifying, tore through the fabric of space, their engines leaving a trail of burning stardust behind them. The Kareth had no patience for subtlety. They came for one reason: to dominate. The signal, a mystery in their eyes, was a potential threat that demanded an immediate response. The moment their lead dreadnought dropped out of hyperspace, the fleet's sensors flared, signaling an unexpected energy surge from the system. Something was happening at the heart of the signal's origin, something the Kareth hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just the faint hum of some ancient relic, it was a waking giant. "What is this?" The fleet commander, High Warlord Karak, muttered under his breath. He leaned forward, his clawed fingers gripping the console, his mind racing to understand the rapid fluctuations in energy. The Kareth had conquered hundreds of planets, destroyed countless species, and yet, here they were, facing an unknown power they could not quantify. For the first time in a long time, the High Warlord felt fear coil in his stomach. Without warning, the system's dormant defenses sprang into life. Weapons platforms that had lain dormant for millennia powered up in an instant. Massive drones, sleek, armored, and terrifying, shot out from hidden launch bays across the system, their eyes glowing with a cold, calculating intelligence. The Kareth were no longer in control of the battlefield. They were intruders. "Warlord Karak, we are under attack," came the frantic voice of one of the Kareth officers. Karak's eyes flashed with rage. His fleet's warships were bristling with weaponry, ready to obliterate any adversary in their path. But these new attackers, these unknown machines, were different. They didn't fight like any species he had encountered. They didn't retreat. They didn't hesitate. They were swift, relentless, and their weaponry, it was far beyond anything the Kareth had ever seen. Ships were disintegrating, not destroyed by explosions, but reduced to nothing in a heartbeat. How is this possible? Karak hissed, watching as his fleet was torn apart. His flagship, a massive dreadnought, was hit by a single burst of energy from one of the drones, its shields flickering out before the ship was torn apart, its massive hull disintegrating into space. The Kareth warriors on board screamed as their lives were snuffed out in an instant. The horror was palpable across the fleet. At that moment, Karak realized something that sent a cold shiver down his spine. This wasn't an ordinary enemy. The humans had triggered something ancient, something vast, and now their species was paying the price for underestimating the unknown. "Signal for retreat," Karak bellowed, his voice cracking with panic. The surviving ships began to turn and flee, but it was too late. A swarm of automated drones, each more advanced and deadly than any Kareth warship, descended upon them. The Kareth fleet, once so confident in its strength, was now a shattered husk, fleeing into the void. Across the galaxy, the news of the Kareth's defeat spread quickly. Their vaunted fleet, once feared across countless star systems, had been wiped out in mere hours by an unknown force. The message was clear, though few truly understood its implications. The humans had just triggered something they couldn't control, and it had obliterated the Kareth. Back on Earth, the humans watched the unfolding events with a mixture of awe and fear. They had set something in motion that could never be undone. The automated system, a relic of a forgotten age, was not just a defense mechanism. It was a weapon capable of rewriting the balance of power in the galaxy. But even as the Kareth fleet staggered in retreat, another force was already on its way, the Xantor. As the Kareth fleet limped away, battered and broken, the galaxy's greatest minds were left to grapple with a question no one had expected. Who were these humans? The unexpected defeat of one of the most fearsome empires in the galaxy set the stage for a chain reaction that no one could stop. The Kareth had been reduced to dust in a matter of hours, but the warlords of the galaxy, particularly the Xantor, weren't easily shaken. They had fought, conquered, and outsmarted entire civilizations. Now they faced something more dangerous than any foe they had ever encountered: the unknown. The Xantor, a species revered for their intellect and strategic prowess, quickly mobilized. The High Council of the Xantor, an assembly of the most brilliant minds in the galaxy, called for an emergency summit. They had long been the architects of intergalactic diplomacy, but now they were faced with a problem that neither diplomacy nor military might could solve. "We have to understand this," said Tazar, the leader of the Xantor's council. His voice echoed in the chamber, a mix of anxiety and determination. The Kareth have fallen, and with them, any illusion of invulnerability. Whatever triggered this force, it's not a weapon, it's a system. But who controls it? Tsar's words were sharp, calculated. His species prided itself on being able to adapt to any situation. But this was different. This was no ordinary defense system. It was something alive in its own way, a mechanism that seemed to think and react with terrifying precision. And unlike any other AI they had ever encountered, This one did not answer to any one race or government. It responded to the signal, and the moment that signal was activated, it went to war against an intruder. The Carith had been the first victims, but would the Xantor be next? The Xantor fleet, already on high alert, departed in full force, determined to discover the source of the signal and determine whether it could be neutralized or controlled. Their ships, sleek, fast, and armed with the most advanced technology the galaxy had to offer, moved swiftly through the stars toward the point of the disturbance. But what they did not know was that they were walking into a trap of unimaginable scale. Within moments of entering the system, the Xantor fleet encountered the same unimaginable power that had destroyed the Carith. Automated war drones, each more deadly than the last, swarmed toward them. They were like locusts, descending on the fleet with no regard for their own safety, for their own existence. The Xantor fleet tried to fight back, but it was clear that they were up against something far beyond their comprehension. Their weapons, normally so precise and powerful, seemed ineffectual against the relentless onslaught. The drones evaded every shot with impossible agility. The Xantor attempted evasive maneuvers, outsmarting their usual enemies with tactical brilliance, but the automated systems were different. They didn't follow traditional patterns of warfare. They adapted in real time, countering every move with terrifying efficiency. "We can't win this battle," a tactical officer aboard one of the Xantor warships screamed into the comms. "They are everywhere. It's too much. Retreat. We must retreat." But it was too late. One by one, the Xantor ships were overwhelmed. Their once mighty fleet, feared and revered across the galaxy, was being torn apart. Drones sliced through shields like paper and tore through the hulls of their ships with ease. Within moments, the once proud fleet had been reduced to a field of debris floating in the void. The Xantor, masters of strategy, had underestimated the sheer unpredictability and power of the automated system. On Earth, humanity watched as the Xantor fleet was shattered. The automated system, activated by their own signal, had once again proven its power. But as the last of the Xantor warships exploded in a brilliant flash, a dark realization crept into humanity's leaders. The galaxy had just witnessed the unthinkable. Two of its greatest empires had been brought to their knees by something they couldn't even understand, something humanity had unknowingly set into motion. The aftermath of the Xantor fleet's annihilation sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. What had once been regarded as an impregnable empire, one of the most strategic, intelligent, and ruthless forces in the known universe, had been wiped from existence with the same terrifying efficiency as the Carith. Across the galaxy, a cold dread settled into the hearts of every empire, every faction, and every individual who had once believed they stood above humanity. For the Xantor, it was a crushing blow. Their fleet, which had once struck fear into the hearts of their enemies, was now a pile of debris scattered across the void. No warning had come, no sign that the ancient automated defense system would respond so violently. For the first time in their long history, the Xantor felt helpless. In the Xantor High Council chamber, the mood was somber. The council was silent, every member absorbed in the enormity of their failure. Cesar, their leader, stared at the shattered holographic display showing the remains of their fleet. His normally calm and calculated expression was twisted with disbelief. "The Carith, the Xantor, gone," Cesar muttered, his voice heavy with the weight of the galaxy's new reality. "But how? How could something like this exist? Something we cannot control. We have always controlled the battlefield. Until now." A counselor spoke up, his voice trembling with fear. This is the power of humanity. Their signal. We underestimated them. But now, it's clear. They've awakened a force we cannot hope to defeat. The council was forced into a bitter reality. The humans had activated a system so powerful, so beyond comprehension, that it had obliterated two of the galaxy's mightiest fleets without hesitation. But what were the humans really trying to achieve? Had they unknowingly triggered this ancient machine, or were they somehow in control of it? Tsar's mind raced. He had to know more. They had to find a way to stop this before it consumed every empire in the galaxy. "We cannot fight what we do not understand," Tsar said, finally breaking the silence. "But we can still learn from it. We will send our best minds to Earth. We will make contact with them and determine the true nature of this weapon. We must understand it, or we will be destroyed." But what Tsar didn't know was that the Xantor weren't the only ones considering this approach. News of the Xantor's failure spread quickly across the galaxy, and many of the remaining empires began to see humanity not as a species to ignore, but as a terrifying force that could either be negotiated with or destroyed. And the truth was, many feared that humanity was not the harmless, insignificant species they once thought them to be. On Earth, the leaders of humanity watched as their planet's name was broadcast across the galaxy, now feared and respected by many. The decision to activate the signal had changed everything. No longer could they simply be passive observers in galactic affairs. They had unintentionally created a weapon capable of shaking the foundations of every empire. In Earth's command center, a somber meeting was underway. The scientists and military leaders who had triggered this chain of events gathered around a table, their faces grim. The implications of their discovery were clear. They could not unmake what they had set into motion. "We never meant for it to go this far," General Catherine Morrow, the human commander in charge of the operation, said, her voice steady but laced with regret. "But now we have two of the galaxy's largest fleets destroyed, and we don't know who else is coming for us." A scientist, Dr. Elias Grant, spoke up, his voice tinged with fear. "We don't know what this system is. It's not something we can control. It reacts to threats, but it's like it's alive. What happens when it realizes humanity is a threat?" No one had an answer to that question. The galaxy was in chaos. The once stable power structures were unraveling, and every major empire now turned its eyes toward Earth. No longer considered a backwater world, humanity had become an unwitting force to be reckoned with. The destruction of the Kareth and Xantor fleets by the ancient automated system was a game-changer. But what worried the galaxy's remaining powers more than anything was the unknown nature of the force they were facing. No one knew if humanity could control the system, if they even understood it. Worse still, no one knew if Earth had a plan, or if the humans had even realized the full extent of the power they had unleashed. In the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened, a place where the leaders of all the galaxy's great empires gathered to discuss matters of mutual interest and threat. The council was now filled with nervous tension. The Kareth and Xantor delegates, once stalwart representatives of their species, were conspicuously absent. Their empires were shattered. The council was left to deal with the fallout of their destruction, and all eyes were now on Earth. I never thought I would see the day when I would hear of the fall of the Xantor and the Kareth at the hands of a mere species of humans, the representative from the Sithar Dominion. "A reptilian race with scales like obsidian," said coldly. "I find it difficult to believe that the humans are responsible for this, or that they understand the full power of what they've triggered. Yet, here we are." The Sithar's voice echoed in the chamber, their tone filled with both disbelief and a hint of growing fear. Their fleet was one of the largest in the galaxy, but even they had always steered clear of the automated systems that Earth had unwittingly activated. The implications of such power were enough to make even the most fearsome species hesitate. "We can no longer afford to wait and see," the elder voice of the Androni delegation spoke. The Androni were a race of massive, highly intelligent beings who had long held sway in galactic politics. "We need to act now before we are all caught in the wake of humanity's rise. There is no telling what kind of danger this system poses. If it has destroyed 2 fleets in a matter of days, what could it do if it turns on the rest of us?" The tension in the council chamber grew thick. Each faction, each empire, was now aware of the stakes. The automated defense system was not just a weapon, it was a force of nature. It did not respect borders or alliances. It responded only to the signal that humanity had unknowingly triggered, and its power seemed limitless. As the council bickered, the question remained: could humanity be trusted, or would they, too, fall victim to their own creation? A deep rumble echoed in the chamber as a quiet, steady voice broke the tension. "We have no choice but to negotiate." The voice belonged to Ambassador Vallis of the Felisorian people, a small feline species known for their diplomatic acumen. The Felisorians had always maintained neutrality, seeking peace even among the fiercest of enemies. "We need to meet with the humans," Vallis continued. "We must establish communication. If the system has responded to their signal, they may have some insight into its operation. And if they cannot control it, we need to know that before it turns on us. It is the only way forward." The council murmured in agreement. The next steps were clear. Earth would need to be contacted, and an emissary would be sent. The galaxy's future depended on it. Back on Earth, the pressure was mounting, as the rest of the galaxy prepared to converge on them. Humanity's leaders realized that the next phase of their survival would not be an easy one. The unknown force they had unleashed was no longer just a problem for their planet. It was now a galactic crisis, and as much as they feared it, they couldn't ignore the bitter truth. They had to learn to control the system, or face the consequences of its wrath. The diplomatic envoys from the Galactic Council arrived at Earth within weeks, their ships descending gracefully through the atmosphere. The sight of the imposing, sleek alien crafts, each belonging to one of the galaxy's most powerful empires, caused widespread panic and awe among Earth's citizens. But the leaders of humanity were preparing for what could be their greatest challenge: to negotiate with the very powers that once viewed them as insignificant. In a high-security bunker beneath the United Nations headquarters, world leaders and scientists gathered, their minds filled with the weight of the situation. The world's greatest minds worked around the clock to establish some understanding of what they were dealing with. No one had anticipated that humanity would be summoned to the center of galactic politics in such a way. The automated defense system they had accidentally activated had leveled the playing field, and now they had to navigate a world of diplomacy, uncertainty, and raw power. "I never thought it would come to this," General Catherine Morrow said, staring at the large holographic display of the incoming fleet. "We were never supposed to be here. We didn't sign up for this." Dr. Elias Grant, the lead scientist who had uncovered the signal and activated the system, spoke with a tone of regret. "We never knew how far-reaching this technology was. We thought we were just activating some dormant defense mechanism for Earth's safety. But this changes everything. The galaxy doesn't understand us. We need to make them understand that we're not the aggressors here." The first representatives to step out of the alien ships were the Sithar, the most powerful military faction among the galaxy's empires. Their intimidating, reptilian forms, their sharp, glittering eyes, and the heavy armor they wore created a sense of dread in everyone present. But it wasn't fear that drove the humans now. It was determination. Earth's leaders had already agreed that survival meant one thing above all else: cooperation. They needed to be part of the galactic community, not just a footnote to be erased by its more powerful inhabitants. Ambassador Enzath, a towering Sithar with scale patterns like obsidian glass, was the first to speak as he entered the UN compound. His voice, rough and menacing, carried the weight of authority, and the room fell silent. "Humans," he began, his eyes scanning the room. "You have proven that you possess technology beyond anything we expected. But you've also shown that you can bring ruin to anyone who stands in your way, intentionally or not. This system you've unleashed has destroyed 2 fleets, shattered galactic power structures. It will not stop until the threat is eliminated, and we are all, every empire, every race, at risk." General Morrow stepped forward, maintaining a calm but resolute stance. "We didn't intend for any of this. We activated the system to protect Earth. We had no idea it would respond in such a way. But now we're facing something we can't control, and we need help to understand it. before it destroys everything. Tsar, the Xantor ambassador, followed, his own sleek form and glowing eyes betraying the subtle undercurrent of his species' intelligence. We were wrong. We thought we could maintain control over the galaxy. But we were foolish. Humanity has changed the course of our future, for better or worse. We have no choice but to work with you. The galaxy's factions now faced an uncomfortable truth. The balance of power was shifting. The humans had become central players in a game they had never signed up for. As Earth's leaders listened to the alien ambassadors, one thought resonated more than any other. This was not just about survival. This was about ensuring humanity's place in the galaxy. "We need to come to an agreement," Tsar said, his voice calm but tinged with the weight of the moment. "You control the signal, the system. What you decide next will determine whether we will be your allies or your enemies." For the first time, humanity stood at the crossroads of their own destiny. The rest of the galaxy was watching, waiting to see whether they would seize this newfound power with wisdom or recklessness. "We will cooperate," General Morrow declared, her voice steady. "But we need to understand how this system works, and we need to ensure that it doesn't destroy us all." The negotiations that followed the first contact were unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. The leaders of Earth, alongside representatives from the Sithar, Xantor, and other galactic empires, huddled in a high-tech council chamber deep within a newly constructed orbital facility. The weight of the galaxy's attention pressed heavily on Earth's leaders, but it was General Catherine Morrow who stood at the forefront, leading humanity's delegation with a calm yet unyielding resolve. The terms were clear. Humanity had triggered an ancient and powerful system of defense, one that had already brought two mighty fleets to their knees. The galaxy was on edge, teetering between fearing humanity as a potential new weapon of mass destruction and recognizing them as an invaluable ally with knowledge that could alter the course of galactic history. "We have all witnessed the power you unleashed with the signal," Tsar, the Xantor representative, began, his voice measured but wary. "And we have all felt the destruction it can bring. But humanity is unlike any species we encountered before. Your willingness to negotiate, to seek a resolution, shows potential. The question is whether you can control this system, or if it will continue to act independently of your intentions." Morrow stood and addressed the assembly, her voice firm yet diplomatic. "We do not seek to control this system. We only seek to understand it. Our people activated it by mistake, not as an act of aggression. But as much as we regret the devastation it has caused, we also recognize the responsibility we now bear. If this system is a threat, we will work with you to neutralize it. But if it is a force for protection, we must ensure it can be used in a way that benefits the entire galaxy without destroying everything we've worked to protect." There was a heavy pause as the room processed her words. The Sithar ambassador, Enzath, looked from Morrow to the rest of the council with calculating eyes. "And what of your power? What do you intend to do with the weapon you've unwittingly unleashed? The same system that destroyed the Kareth and Xantor fleets could easily turn on the rest of us. What if your species decides to use it against us, now that you know you hold the key?" The fear that had been simmering beneath the surface of the Galactic Council bubbled to the forefront. The idea that humanity might, at any moment, decide to activate the system again was terrifying. However, the Sithar knew that controlling such a power was far too dangerous for any one species. Even their own empire, with its massive fleets, could not challenge such an automated force. "That is why we must find a way to safeguard this power," Morrow replied, locking eyes with Enzath. "We cannot simply ignore it, nor can we allow it to fall into the wrong hands. The system is here to stay. What matters now is how we proceed. The human race is not a species driven by conquest. We are driven by survival and the desire to protect our world and the lives within it." Ambassador Valis of the Felisorian people, who had remained silent throughout much of the meeting, now spoke up. "Perhaps then, the solution lies not in destroying this system, but in sharing it. Humanity holds the key, but perhaps it is the galaxy that must decide how to wield it in a unified effort, rather than as a tool of any one faction. The room grew quiet. The idea of a shared responsibility was unprecedented. No empire had ever agreed to such an arrangement. Power had always been hoarded by the strongest, the most strategic, but the galaxy was changing. In the face of an unknown, omnipotent force, cooperation had become the only viable solution. After a long silence, Tazar spoke again. "This is unprecedented," he said. "But we are at a crossroads. We cannot afford to let fear dictate our future. We will work with you, General Morrow, on one condition. The system must be monitored and governed collectively. No empire, no species, shall have sole control." Morrow nodded, a mixture of relief and determination crossing her face. "Agreed. Together, we will ensure the system is used responsibly." As the negotiations continued, the galaxy stood on the cusp of a new era. The once feared divide between Earth and the galaxy's most powerful empires was beginning to close. Humanity had gone from being a minor player to a central force in galactic diplomacy, and with it came a new understanding. Unity in the face of the unknown could either make or break their future. The future of the galaxy would no longer be decided by might alone. The power to protect or destroy lay in the hands of those who understood the true cost of control.